Hey guys, my name is John McBride. I'm a technology evangelist here at Citrix, and I wanted to show you a recent update that we did to our Visual Studio extension for Citrix developers, and more specifically, it's how to use the extension to create a Citrix Director plugin, and we'll kind of walk through that little tutorial and quick start to show you how to get up and running using the extension to build a plugin. So with that, we'll kind of jump in and get started. We're gonna kind of run through and show you how to use the tool to create a very basic plugin and get it installed, and then we'll have some follow-up videos that actually drill more into the code and what it actually means and how it's actually implemented. So this one's just going to be a high level overview on how to get the tool, and then how to use the sample to actually get started building the plugin. So with that, let's get started. So um, once you have the Visual Studio extension installed, you'll get some additional new project templates. But to install the extension, you can use the extension gallery within Visual Studio, and you can go to the Tools menu, and then Extensions and Updates, and then if you click on the Online option here, then we can just search for Citrix. You can see it's the Citrix Developer Visual Studio extension. We already have it installed. You can install that. We'll install some additional extensions as prerequisites. And once it's installed, you're ready to go. So go ahead and install that and let us know what you think. But once it's installed, you can then do File, New Project, and we'll kind of run through this. And you'll see now under C#, you'll have a Citrix node. And then here's all of our SDKs. For this particular tutorial, we'll actually focus on the Director plugin. And you can see we have a kind of a sample Director plugin here. So we'll just call this plugin here and say OK. And the first thing you notice is we're going to prompt you for some plugin specific information. One is just basically the name you want to call it. We'll call this my cool plugin, and then the description is call this my custom plugin. Let's say OK here. Now we're actually going and generating the sample for you, and we do a couple interesting things here. So first thing to note is we actually create a markdown file for you, and that is basically explains what the tutorial is and some of the things you're going to have to do once the sample is installed within Visual Studio, like add a couple common DLLs that we actually don't ship with the sample, but if you have Director, you can add reference into the project from the Director server. So and then basically how to deploy the sample on your Director server. So that's one thing. We include the markdown, and then we also include some build scripts, so some post build scripts. So when you actually build the project, we'll create a zip file and an installation script that'll help you get the plugin installed on your Director server. But for now, we can see here, if we scroll up on the README, it says first thing we're going to have to do is install or add reference to a couple DLLs. So for this particular instance, we're running a Director a little older than 7.8, so we're going to use these two DLLs as references, and those are located on the Director server in the following location. So we'll actually go to references here and say add reference, and then browse, and you're going to want to browse on the Director server to your local C drive, and then you want to go to inetpub www.root Director, in the bin directory. For prior to Director 7.8, you're going to want to include the common.dll as well as the web service.dll. We can say add here, were checked. So we'll add those references. So we have those two added. And now if we go ahead and build it, you can see that we'll actually, we build successfully. So that's good. And then one other thing to note is you can check out this Task Runner Explorer here, and you can see that we're actually generating the zip file and the installation script for help actually deploying the project. So that's kind of interesting. So we won't dive too much into the code specifically. We'll do that in another video. Just suffice it to say that we have an interface here for the Director plugin that says what API methods we want to include, as well as the implementation of that particular one. So if we look at that real quick, you can see that the interface, we're actually implementing two API methods. One's called API method 1. One's basically called API method 2. This one returns a string, and this one returns a list of strings. And then if you look at the implementation of that, you can actually just see here's the implementation of it, returning just a static string here, and then this is a list of strings. So that's kind of the interface for the plugin, and then the actual implementation of it. And then for our UI, we have the UI under the user interface directory, and there's our index.html. You guys can check that out once you download the sample and check it out. And then here's our build scripts that we actually have for you. So, but once we do that, we'll go ahead and build it again. And I'll show you kind of where the zip and the installation script goes. So once you build it, the task runner kind of creates the post build step and creates the zip and the install file. If you kind of click on show all files here, you'll see that we actually create a directory called deploy. Under that deploy directory, there's two files. You're going to want to copy these files out to your Director server and then run them. The README also has some information on how to do that. But if we basically look at it, the PowerShell, the PS1 file, basically takes that zip file and then extracts it out to the local C drive. And if we actually look at the zip file here, you can see we build the directory structure for you. So here's all the information. When you extract it, it will go into the correct places within the Director server to actually do 95% of the registration for you. There's still a manual step that you're going to have to do, but we'll show you how to do that. Okay, so once we have that, let's actually get it installed. So if we we'll navigate to this directory from within PowerShell here. So directory and load up PowerShell. And we can see in the directory and there are two files. We'll actually run the installation script. And you can see Director has been deployed. So the plugin's been deployed to the Director server. And we're almost ready to go. So if we take a look at this, we'll show you one thing here. If we look into the Director server, you can see we'll see if we look in the plugin directory, you can see that our test plugin DLL has been placed in there. This is the place the Director will look for any plugins to load up. If we take a look at the plugins directory, you can see here's the plugin directory. Basically, this is where your user interface goes. So that's the name of the plugin that we created. And then you can see that our user interface is located here. and then in the display config directory, we have our plugin information here. Now, one interesting thing that we do for you is we'll actually create some templates for you to actually either use to register the plugin, or you can just copy and paste out of it. So if we real quick, if we jump back here to the README file and we look at the deployment steps here, it says last step we actually have to do is we actually register the plugin. And we kind of list there's two ways we can do it. We can either copy one of the template files that we give you, or you can modify one of the existing ones. I think for this video, we'll actually just modify one. So we'll look in one of the templates, or we'll copy it. How about we just copy it? So we'll copy the trends template. If you actually look at it, you can see the only thing that's really different is we actually add this new panel element to the template XML file, which tells it this is the plugin that we want you to load. So what we can do is we'll just copy this guy here, and we'll jump back into display config, and we'll delete the trends page config XML file, and then we'll paste ours in there, and we'll do a little rename here of the trends page. Now we'll run a IIS reset here. Okay, so that's good, and we'll actually load up. We'll load up Director here. So we'll log into Director. And while that loads up, there we go. Okay, so Director just took a little bit to load up. If you remember, we actually modified the trends config. So if we click on this on the trends option here, you can see that we actually loaded up our plugin. The title of the plugin tab that you see here comes from the description that you entered when you first created the Director plugin project within Visual Studio. So if we click on this, you can see here's our very simple UI that we had. That comes from, if we jump over here to Visual Studio, that comes from our index.html file. So that's the UI here that you can feel free to change as you see fit, or create a new one. So we can test our methods now. So we can just test the return a simple string. So if we call that, we say we successfully called API method 1, and then here's our return value that we get. So here's actually value you get, and then here's the raw JSON that comes back from the from the API itself. And if we remember what that implementation was, you can see that we're actually returning that string there. And if we click on this, call example API method 2, you can see that we actually get a list of groups, group 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then this is our return raw JSON that we actually get back. Return an array of strings, or a list of strings. So if we look at that kind of implementation here in the code, you can see we are returning a list of strings, and here's the string. So that's the two method calls that we implemented, and the plugin shown in Director. It's kind of a quick overview on how to get started with a Director plugin in the new Citrix Developer Visual Studio extension. So just wanted to give a quick overview on how to get up and running with that sample real quick. And we'll create some additional videos that actually dig into the code a little bit more, and maybe do a live coding session where we'll actually build a plugin and modify it kind of real time. So with that, thank you. And if any questions or anything, feel free to reach out. You can reach out to me on Twitter at John McBride, or leave a comment on the Visual Studio Director plugin page, or Visual Studio extension page in the gallery. We'd love to hear from you. So again, thanks for checking it out, and let us know what you think. Thanks.